I want to give a special shout out to my patrons. These are the people that behind the scenes provide the support to help me keep this podcast going. I want to thank Rob Barnett, Mary Thomas, John Munson, Terry Smith, Bella Pori, Dale Hozak, Crystal Carroll, Andrew Goddard, Stephen Malio, Anna Lynn, Betsy Hodges, Randy Brown, Chris Bloom, and Steve Roger, Captain America. Thank you guys so much for your support. It means the world to me. Now, let's get on with the podcast.
I believe that heavy metal is the modern incantation of traditional classical music because it's one of the last few genres where you have talented musicians on multiple instruments doing a performance. You don't really have that with rap, with pop music, with hip hop, maybe country music. They'll perform their instruments, pop punk. But when you're watching these guys playing something that is 160 BPM, 170 BPM, and they're just nailing it. And it's like watching nerds play Guitar Hero, but it's a real instrument. I guess it's a certain level of skill and dedication to have that expression. It also feels really good now just to sit behind the drums and just crash it out and know that I'm playing what I'm supposed to.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, but we are getting off the Bruce train tonight, though he will come up as he normally does. And I'm talking to my new friend, Paul. And Paul and I have been trying to coordinate a discussion for it feels like a half a year. That's probably extreme, but it has been a while. So, Paul, welcome to Set Listing Bruce.
Thank you, man. I'm so happy to be here. And you're right. Half a year might be accurate because, like, I was sick and then you were sick. And then there was like a scheduling and even almost tonight, like, even with the Zoom links, like it's been a minute, but I'm excited because this is definitely not my normal style of podcast. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I kind of love that because we had done a connection and like I was looking for guests and usually we get a lot of, and we're going to talk about Paul's day gig and what he does a lot, but his eyes I could see lighting up like, oh, we can just talk music. And so we're excited. So I'm looking forward to this one. So to start out with, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, from the music standpoint, I've been around music my whole life. Even before I was born, my parents were lounge singers in like the early 80s. So they were a male female duo that would go around to different hotel bars and whatnot and play music and entertain the folks and do covers and that kind of stuff. And so then after they had me and that kind of settled down, my dad always had sound equipment in the house and he's always playing the guitar. And I just thought that was like a normal thing. I thought music was just, everybody has music hanging out in their family with sound gear, and that's not the case. And get a little guest Remy over here. My kitty wants to chill in my lap. So I mean, I've been around music and been musical for my whole life. And then in college, my dad gave me a drum machine. So I started doing some electronic music and then got into heavy metal, or at least producing heavy metal. I was already into it by then. And then got a set of drums about 10 years ago and been in a band, and now I'm in a band. And by daytime, I help businesses grow by being more efficient through automation and media.
So you kind of right, like in that, it's kind of funny, right? Like you have a dual identity, right? Like during the day that you're doing a lot of business talk and work, and you have I've checked, you have a very strong LinkedIn presence and you do a lot of postings. But then you into a nearby phone booth and come out to go, hey, it's rock and roll guy.
Yeah, it is pretty wild, and I've been fortunate to blend that because I'm just a nerd at the end of the day. I'm just a nerd. I'm a big nerd, and straight
Mhm.
up, not even gonna try and pretend I'm not like this, geeky engineer type. And I have a master's in electrical engineering, like that kind of stuff. I build people circuits for a living. So I'm not trying to hide that I'm a nerd, and that's part of what makes me go to my day job. And I'm really passionate about music, and in particular heavy metal, and just keeping music going. Um, and I've been lucky to blend that with my personal brand. So when people out there in the world, whenever some heavy metal thing kind of shows up, they'll tag me in it and be like, "Oh, look, it's you, Paul," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's my personal brand. I love it." Um, because yeah, I mean, I don't really. I work from home. I've got a handful of animals. Don't really leave the house. I have conversations with people from all over the world, but I leave my house twice a day to walk the dog and then buy groceries and take my girlfriend out every once in a while. That's about it. So I guess it is a night and day kind of thing where yeah, when the sun's out, I'm pushing stuff ahead,
Yeah.
and then at night I'm rehearsing or doing whatever I feel like doing, pushing cats away from me.
Yeah. Well, what you made me smile because someone reached out to me via LinkedIn, as happens all the time, right? And I think this is for everything, but I feel it especially as a call center guy, LinkedIn, I get, emails all the time about from staffing agencies, from technology people like, hey, I can reduce your cost of engagement. I can, omni platforms and, just all these different things. And
Words.
yeah, yeah. And so, and I have no problem. It being sales is a tough gig, and I always try to be nice to people. And, I go right up front, hey, I'm a bad prospect, or and a little sign. The way I will usually visit with you is if your letter is, hey, I just want to talk to you about call centers. Like, I just want to pick your brain, and they'll say, and whether anything goes for it or not, I always learn. And so I'm always open to someone because I've been doing this since 1989.
Oh, nice.
So the guy came today, we set this up, and he started out with going, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing pretty well. Bruce Springsteen announced new tour dates. I'm feeling great. And we spent 15 minutes because he's like, I can talk call centers all the time. No one ever wants to talk to me about something else. So we spent 15 minutes just talking about, like, oh, how did you become a Bruce fan? How many times you seen him? Oh, I'm a casual
That's
fan. I grew up in Austin. And then at the end of that, he goes, okay. And I said, yeah, what do you want to know? Let's talk. So,
awesome.
right.
Good
So
rapport.
yeah, that's the way to go. So you talked about getting a drum machine, getting at drums, but when did you first know, or what about heavy metal? What about that genre of music spoke to you and made you such a fan of it? And talk about when you discovered it, and if you can, articulate why this was your quote unquote music.
So let's see. So I was initially drawn to heavy metal through really two bands. One was Cradle of Filth, and the other was Dimmu Borgir, and both of these were artists that were featured in the CKY3 videos. So if you remember Jackass by Margera, those skate videos, I literally went on to Kazaa or LimeWire, Morpheus, whatever at the time, and like theme from CKY3, and I found these artists, and then I guess what drew me to it was the intensity of it. And then, of course, being older and growing up now, I manage a brain that has borderline personality disorder. So that's a very intense, yeah, it's the hypersensitive, intense kind of space. So it makes sense that, yeah, I'm going to love heavy metal and just real intense stuff. And then if you're one of the woo-woo crystal types, I'm a Scorpio, so I'm very passionate about whatever I like, and so that adds on to it too. So it's interesting. I guess I was initially drawn to that kind of music for the like, I guess the like anti-religious, like boo god type stuff, but that's a sophomoric approach for the music, and yeah, that type of stuff is there and whatnot, but when you get deeper into it, I believe that heavy metal is the modern incantation of traditional classical music, because it's one of the last few genres where you have talented musicians on multiple instruments doing a performance. You don't really have that with rap, with pop music, with hip hop, maybe country music. They'll perform their instruments, pop punk. But when you're watching these guys playing something that is 160 BPM, 170 BPM, and they're just nailing it. And it's like watching nerds play Guitar Hero, but it's a real instrument. I guess it's a certain level of skill and dedication to have that expression. It also feels really good now just to sit behind the drums and just crash it out and know that I'm playing what I'm supposed to. The band I'm in, we play to a click track because we have background, symphonies and orchestras. So we have to be in sync with that. So unlike most bands where the drummer is, you follow the drummer, it's like, no, you follow the click track. And as the drummer, I'm also following the click track. It's almost like playing DDR. It's very interesting to be back there because I can't really hear much. I have my little in-ear monitors, but I can see them playing. I can see the timing and feel the vibrations and stuff. It's pretty interesting. And I guess it's like anything else. It's like an acquired taste. The more you listen to it, the more your ear becomes discerning. The more you can pick out, oh, this is this style or it's that style. Equating it to people that are big wine fans or beer fans or also like whiskey connoisseurs. Like over time, your palate gets more developed. And I feel like I've been ranting.
No, 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 that's good. Though, name me the two bands again, because I don't think I've ever heard of them.
Yeah, so the first band was Cradle of Filth, and
Okay.
they're from the United Kingdom, been around for since the early 90s
Okay.
doing that. And then the other one is Dimmu Borgir, which comes from, there's an Icelandic rock structure called the Dimmu Borgir, and it's, apparently some gateway to hell kind of thing, at least according to the mythos. And so they're from Norway, and they've done their stuff about as long.
Because the reason I'm asking is I have a real good friend who her boyfriend, now husband, was a huge Metallica fan and she could not stand Metallica. Then they got married and then she converted over, and now then in fact she was on for a second time talking about they went to in San Francisco they had a Metallica anniversary, 2 or 3
Oh,
shows, and
cool.
she went. Yeah, she went. And so I love the idea that this is someone, someone going, oh, tell me your influences, and Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard. Absolutely, that's great. But hearing someone say Bob Wills or Jimmy Rogers, or someone you
Mhm.
go, oh wow, wait a minute, this is a little bit. So I think that's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
deeply.
How
Yeah.
did you because I can't think they were being played even on the FM station. So where did you grow up?
So
What
I
part of?
grew up in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay.
Good old Sarasota, Florida. And
Where?
so, like I said, from skateboarding videos
Okay.
and the CKY3 videos specifically, the Bam
Okay.
Margera produced, they
Okay.
had songs from Cradle of Filth, Dimmu Borgir, a couple other bands, and yeah, this was before. I mean, this was the early 2000s, so you just kind of had to again search the file sharing networks for
Yes.
whatever, and then I found it was themed from CKY, and then the artist tag still had Dimmu Borgir on it. And then I was like, cool, here's the lead, and then I could kind of search for it through the search further through it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it is interesting to hear those really deep. those deep cuts and where people come from, because I mean,
Are-
there's great music everywhere.
yeah, Paul, do you continue to be more, and probably I don't want to say this incorrectly, right? But what, more obscure heavy metal versus more of mainstream, or do you kind of
Um,
embrace both?
well, I absolutely embrace both. I am a champion of the local independent heavy metal. So, I mean, being here in Arizona and running the Dead of Winter Fest for as long as we have, there is some really super talented bands and amazing people that are these just awesome artists. And some of them are starting to get picked up and getting bigger names and things like that. So I'm just as much a fan of those folks as I am somebody that here's this new band from a label that is getting pushed. Okay, let's listen to them. Let's see if we like it.
Yeah.
So, but in general, yeah, the more obscure. I mean, if you 100 people on the street talk to me about heavy metal, again, maybe one or two will be slightly familiar with some of the stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm
my
definitely a historian and like a student of just of the art, I guess.
Yeah, my nephew was in a band called Element 80, and they went through a little spell of recording music. And I went through. I'm now older, but when my wife and I got married in '84, we moved to Dallas in '86, and we discovered the local Dallas music scene. Deep Ellum, Port David's Pub, all these things. So we would see Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians before they hit up. A band from Denton called Brave Combo, which is still together. They do rock and roll polka. A singer songwriter named Sarah. Yeah, yeah, they're fun. If you Brave Combo is fun. They've actually have been nominated and won a Grammy for best polka album. So they can do it both. They can do it straight, and then they can do it,
Yeah,
where people are strange polka. Um, Sarah Hickman was a singer-songwriter, Colin Boyd, other and there's I just recently talked about this. There is a joy. I mean, I am excited about Bruce touring again, and as we're recording this, he just announced U.S. tour dates, and I'm hoping to go as many of them as I can figure out time for and financially afford.
do it, man.
Right,
Do
but
it. If you're listening to this, go ahead and
right,
throw
yeah,
some
yeah,
money in his PayPal or
yeah,
however.
yeah.
Get this guy to every tour. Let's do it.
But there is a beauty to somebody like Madison King, who is a Dallas-based singer-songwriter, and she's playing little clubhouses or little things, and or going to these local bands where they may only get 80, 100 people, and they get to know you, and they will,
Yeah,
right, and they will come back, and like, and because I'm sure you do that, Paul. I'm sure you see people and go, hey, blank blank, good to see you again. How was the show? Are you
100%.
doing, and I know as an audience member, you start pulling for them, like, oh, I really want them to do well.
Hmm.
And also, and you love to be able to give that feedback to the band. I joked, yeah, I love Billy Joel, but he doesn't come after the show and shake my hand and go, hey, thanks for coming out, Jesse. Right. Versus these little bands do, right? They're and so in fact, I saw a guy recently, well, probably now 10 years now, but he was laughing. He said, one of our ladies wanted to get you off the mailing list. And I said, no, he's been with us from the beginning. Trust me, he's getting the postcard. Back
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
used to do postcards. So let's a lot to go through. When did you just like talk about your first band, and talk about when you decided that I needed to do more than just listen. I needed to make it myself. Was that
Oh
something
man.
that called early to you, or was it, tell me about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell you about that. So, as I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but I have a master's in electrical engineering. I actually went to school for signal processing at the University of Central Florida. Go Knights!
Okay.
And in my undergrad, my nerdy butt was just learning. I had like a 6-year math degree, is basically a 6-year math test was basically what I
Yeah.
had. That's what it was. And so I started writing lyrics around like heavy metal crossed with like these mathematical concepts. And I wrote a handful of things and made a couple demo tracks on this drum machine. And I ended up creating a circuit metal album. That was the thing. I'm going to create circuit metal. It's a genre I'm going to make. Wow, right? Um, and I found a buddy of mine who could play guitar, and I'll be danged, the winter of 2010 went to my dad's house in Northport, Florida, and over 3 or 4 days we recorded and produced this. And it's an album, but it's like a demo album. And that was circuit metal. And we had played a couple of house shows before with like live performance and stuff like that. And I mean, it was amazing. And then just the way that life ended up happening, I switched coasts and ended up getting picked up at a software company. And now I'm here in Arizona.
Mm.
Um, but that guy, my guitarist John, he's the other director of Keep Children Rockin', the charity. He's like my guy on the East Coast, and I'm out here on the West Coast with the charity. Um, but yeah, I would have continued. In fact, he came out in, yeah, like that summer 2011, to try and record some more Mofork stuff, and his computer crapped out. His computer like fried like the second day he got here, so that was a bummer. Um, and then from there, I actually got a kit and played a little bit. Met my guitarist Matt of Imperial at a house party that one of my coworkers threw, and he was just a random roommate. And I saw drums up stacked in the garage, and I'm like, "Oh, who's the drummer?" And he's like, "Me, but you probably wouldn't like the stuff I listen to." And we're like, "I like black metal." He's like, "Yeah, me too." He's like, "You like Zaster?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love Zaster." And like we just immediately became like besties. I recruited a guy that worked at the grocery store because he said my Cannibal Corpse shirt was cool. And I'm like, "You want to play guitar in my band?" And then all of a sudden we had a drummer and two guitar people. And that was basically a band. We wrote a couple of songs. We got a vocalist who got us into the scene, but he was also a bad promoter. And so we had to kick him out of the band at some point.
Hmm.
But that got us going. And we even released a 3-song EP. We've got 3 more songs that just need vocals that were recorded. It's almost hilarious at this point because I think in 2018 is when we mastered the guitars and the drums. So we've just been waiting on vocals since then. But the genre is depressive black metal. So that's pretty much par for the course. Like generally it's not that interesting. And it's more just like an art. And no one's buying boats and mansions off of it. And
Yeah.
I totally get that. It's just a thing. And it's fun because it's still being on stage, performing, doing something.
You know, one of the things that I've told this story before, Paul, but my brother-in-law is about 10 years older than I am, and he grew up in a small town and was like the typical, he and his buddy started a band and played at the CYO, played at the Veterans Hall, played,
Yeah,
at school dances, and and
they made it.
he yeah, and he talked about that. One of his buddies actually made it a living, playing, you know, you know, cover bands and weddings and all this other things.
Nice.
And so Ralph ended up being a respiratory therapist and then got an administration in the hospital. But he said if he had his way, he and his buddies would meet in a barn in the middle of nowhere every Sunday and just would play a couple hours for just for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started doing a podcast, my wife said, "Well, who's going to listen to you?" And she means that with love in her heart, right? And I
Right.
said, "I don't care. I care, but it's just enough for me that my guest and I have a good conversation. I hope people find it entertaining. I hope people want to download it and listen. But
Mm-hmm.
the joy in me is having the conversation, getting to
Yeah.
know a person to talk to." So I think the same thing, right? Like you said, no one's buying yachts or, limos on it, but you're getting to make the music you want to make and celebrate. And that has to feel good.
It does, and especially at that time in my life. Let's see, I was getting out of a relationship that really didn't work. Mentally, my mental health was bad. I didn't realize that I was dealing with this thing in my head, and so the music was a really good outlet,
Hmm.
and likely, helped me, to a point.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially because at least now it's uh lyrics would come from those kinds of weird bad headspaces when I'm just feeling just terrible, write stuff down, and cool, now you got some lyrics that put some
Yeah.
music to it. But yeah, fortunately I'm not in that spot anywhere near as much as I used to, which is good.
Yeah. That is
Go
very good.
go take care of your mental health, kids. It's not fun to just
Absolutely.
not be having fun.
Yeah. So, do you often I hear stories about people that, you know, love storytelling, they love poetry, they love, myths, and then they'll slowly work into music. I think it's interesting that your brain being mathematic and formulas and structure helped lead you to making music, right? Because in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, music is math. It is that, quarter notes and eighth notes and this building patterns and doing things.
Hmm.
Um, I, 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 I think that maybe talk a little bit about that connection on that, or am I stretching things too much?
No, no, not at all. I mean, uh, it's really interesting because likely I may have a mild form of ADHD. I may be mildly autistic. I was just never,
Yeah,
tested for this kind of stuff as a kid. I can survive. I'm doing all right. I'm doing
yeah.
great. And I think that's kind of like a superpower. And so for me, I think that's why I was drawn so much to drumming, just the repetitive nature, the patterns. I definitely enjoy just the patterns of it, of
Hmm.
1, 2, 3 rest, or 1, 2 rest, rest three, and or breaking up time signatures, or even just the idea of speeding up or slowing down the tempo has always blown my mind. You can be playing a riff, and then cut the BPMs by 30, and it just gets heavier. And all you did was just slow it down a little bit. And I've always found that really interesting, the relationships between patterns and just how music sounds, or even engineered music, like
Hmm.
the top 40 stuff.
Yeah.
It's really crazy because it's always a pattern interrupt of like some four thing. There's always like something, 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 and then something different. Something, something,
Hmm.
something, something different. Looking at single ladies, feel like should put a ring on it, like should put a ring on it, mixing it up, like should put a ring on it. Okay, they switched it up, but again, it's very engineered. And if you look at a lot of classic guitar beats and riffs, it'll be something catchy. They play it again, and then modify it a little bit, and then
Hmm.
the catchy 1, 2, 3, and then modify it a little bit. Uh, and for whatever reason, the human brain loves that, and I just think that's the coolest thing. It's a
So,
feeling.
in June, I went up to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and there is the new Bob Dylan Museum, and right next to it is the Woody Guthrie Museum. And Woody Guthrie was having a Bruce Springsteen live exhibit, which is the reason why we went up. And
Okay.
one of the features is there was a kiosk, and if you push play, there's Bruce with a acoustic guitar talking about building an encore. And he says, okay, so I'm playing this song and it's going to end in this key. So, and he's strumming. So, what is the next song that what key fits well with that, so that when I transition, I'm building that, you know, I'm building
Yeah.
that anticipation, and so then you see him. Okay, so now that I'm playing this song and it's in this key, which is that. And, from our perspective, I had never thought of it that way. I just thought, like, okay, they've they've done a quick bathroom break, and now they're going to come back and do their encore. Oh, well, he's going to do this song because they haven't done it yet. But to build that crescendo, right? That musically to get the emotions going is a puzzle that you're working on, the same way like a math formula or a word problem, or a proof, like in geometry or something where I'm doing to do these, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I deal with that in my in my day job as far as writing copy and writing ads and things like that.
Yeah.
You use the words to create the feeling that you want the reader to experience. And like you just said, if we're ending in this key, then let's start the encore in a similar or a key that works with it,
Yeah.
and make it awesome. And I feel like a lot of fans don't think about that necessarily. It's almost like a movie where like, oh, it just happens and it was great. And I don't think people get how neurotic artists are about their art and like getting, those kinds of transitions right, or making it really cool, or this really subtle thing that they just love that the audience isn't really going to get, but they're going to get it. Like there's this band Singularity, this amazing technical symphonic, metal band from here. They're all professional musicians at this point, which is super cool. In their first album, they do this really hard bass drop, like a doo, and it just works perfectly with what's going on in the song. And you don't think about it. However, doing that live, you got to make sure you have the right equipment so you don't blow out a sub or something like that. Because like it's a deep warble, and you got to be careful, make sure your equipment's ready for that. And I just don't think people think about that much.
Yeah. In fact, uh, several years ago, Bruce was on VH1 Storytellers. And so he's talking about writing a song, and he says, was I consciously thinking of that? Maybe. Was I specifically going for that? Possibly. Was I feeling it? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And I get that. So and I know we're going to talk mostly music, but I am just a little curious. How
Mm.
do you get from an engineering, a master's in electrical engineering, to working with clients on social content and getting, going to get, more clients and building a brand? I mean, what brought you in that journey?
So
Share
it's
that a
a
little bit.
Yeah, it's a super interesting journey. So I went to school for electrical engineering, started in the fall of 2004 at University of Central Florida. And at the end of that first semester, I got recruited to sell Cutco 9.
Okay.
And not only was I good at selling Cutco, I was also a great sales manager. So from 2004 to like 2007, I sold over 50 grand worth of knives and trained up hundreds of people on how to do this, right? And then it was about my senior year undergrad and starting to get ready for the real world. So I got an internship,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cool. I was doing electrical engineering stuff, and I did it for a year, and I'm like, cool, know that I don't want to do that for 3-4 decades. And so
Mm-hmm.
my roommate and my mentor Will, he started a video email business, and he needed somebody on the other side to help deliver the service and do tech support, that kind of stuff. And so that's where I got into running a business. That's where I was exposed to marketing automation for the first time through
Mm-hmm.
Infusionsoft, now
Yeah.
Keep. And at the end, when I got my master's, and Drive Systems had been going for a couple of years, it was the business didn't need me. It was running by itself. I left. I had the choice to move back into Northport, Florida, or do literally anything else. And
Okay.
so I literally anything else. So I called some Hail Marys, ended up getting from Florida to San Diego in 24 hours for some incubator. Ended up ending that project and being homeless and couch surfing for a little bit,
Mm.
then applying to work at Infusionsoft directly, and through series of miracles got picked up there. That's why I'm in Arizona. And I just kept doing what I was doing, because when I was doing the video email thing, I was a software coach. I was teaching people how to get started with the software and how to use it effectively. And again, troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. So it was the exact same thing when I started with Infusionsoft as a coach. And that's where I found my passion for, I make people circuit.
Okay.
And that's what I do, either through automation or through advertising or combining them. And and now I'm blessed to get paid to do this. And if I do it right, I'm attracting more and more clients that I want to work with,
Hmm.
that have cool stuff going on. I love working with entertainers and artists and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's also why I like doing these kinds of podcasts,
Hmm.
because who knows who's going to hear it.
Yeah.
Uh,
No. You also mentioned you and your partner do a charity. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. So at the last half of 2014, I realized there was a big problem in the world where school budgets were being cut left and right. And that's even more of a problem now. And most arts programs are the first to go, particularly music, because that equipment is pricey. But the problem with that is, if we don't do anything about it, in a couple of generations, there's not going to be any original music, at least not in America. It's all going to be like the talk radio engineered top 40 stuff. And I basically stood up and said, nope, I refuse to live into that world. And that's why we formed Keep Children Rockin'. And we provide music equipment donations and repairs to local music programs. And since we've started, we've had over 20 grand worth of equipment and repairs donated to about 20 schools and programs across Arizona. And the coolest part is we have a heavy metal festival to generate the funds, the Dead of Winter Fest. And before the pandemic, it was actually a whole statewide tour, and we'd do a 2-day show in Phoenix. And this last year, we were able to pick it up again and do it in Phoenix. We weren't able to do it in our home club of Club Red. That got shut down as a result of the pandemic. And that's basically what the charity does. So I get to throw a festival and then stress myself out the rest of the year trying to spend that money getting it into schools and donating equipment, which I do take very seriously.
Well,
And
well, once
it's
again, there's a
great.
synergy, right? Little Steven does Teach Rock, which is that thing. His foundation goes to get, music in schools.
Nice.
And I think it's very clear. Studies show that um, women who participate in organized sports have more confidence, do better things. And I think the same studies show male and female, or they, to be,
2022.
people, yeah, people being in music, there is a benefit to that. It is not, it works creatively. It helps you overall for not only self-worth, but you never know, like your engineering background, right, helps you think of music. Well, who knows how many people that logic of that music might lead them to doing something else. And
Mhm.
the reality is, um, art is important. Art is important to us as a society and as people, and you need to be able to support that. And it's very quickly, and hey, I live in Texas, and I get it. I get that high school football is important, and that, don't mess with, Friday night lights. But it's just as important to have, the band playing, and have art and poetry and writers, and to stress that. So I think that's it's a great charity. And also, it sounds, though it's a lot of work, you also, how proud of it to do that festival for such a great cause.
It is. It is. I do. Again, I hold it in high regard. It's definitely a responsibility, and I want to make sure all these shows are awesome. All the bands are respected, because that's
Yeah.
also another thing too. I was a promoter. I did help Club Red and pushing the shows,
Hmm.
and we would book shows, and the disrespect that certain promoters would have for artists was upsetting, and almost treating it like a taken for granted type thing rather than you don't have a show without these people.
Yeah.
So like be nice to them and don't screw them over kind of stuff. And uh, I think that definitely helped form a lot of where the culture of vPro comes from because the business partner Brina, she's also helping with the promotions, and I know that she would also agree that responsible businesses are going to make the world better. And I personally want to make it harder for the irresponsible ones to be around. And so I don't even know how I got on that tangent, but
No, but I
I
think
did.
that's a good tangent because I know like one of the things you are seeing more and more, like if you watch Shark Tank, right? More and more of the people pitching will have something to do in their business where they're giving back.
Mm-hmm.
That part of their business model is to do something to help the environment or to clean up oceans, to get more
Mm-hmm.
trees, or like Bombas, they provide socks to homeless people.
Right. And that's important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think that anything you can do to support that is good. And because I think I've worked for a lot of companies, Paul, where if you ask them what is our purpose, they will say, well, to have EBITDA grow by next quarter, right? To hit our EBITDA goals for next quarter. Um, the first time I walked into, I had a call center meeting, and we were at Mary Kay's building in Dallas, Texas. You know,
Oh man,
the the
were there a lot of pink cars in the parking lot?
there was, and there were signs everywhere, quotes from their founder, and the idea was the purpose of this business was not to sell makeup, it was to empower women. That was her purpose, you
Okay.
know and I work for a current company that our owner, our purpose is carefree RVing. We offer roadside assistance for the RV industry, and he says carefree RVing. Our purpose is to help people get out and enjoy the outdoor. And I just like that idea. And we aren't going to talk too much business, but I think you need to have a purpose. And I bet that's one of the things
100%.
you discuss is you, if you're just trying to make money, okay, but let's talk about what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And I think that drives success.
100%. 100%. That's how
Yeah,
you get people aligned behind what you're about.
yeah,
As far as like why are we here,
hmm,
getting people behind it.
yeah,
Um, I wish more companies were uh, overly intentional about their why. I feel like you said it's kind of like this platitude they just kind of throw out there. But I
yeah,
really feel like to have anything that's long lasting and it's going to survive, you got to have something that you can carve in stone and stand on and be like, this is what we're about.
yeah,
This is why we're here. Even if it's something as simple as making people's quality of life better.
yeah. And and I think too many people, like I won't name what company I work for, but um my our boss bought the Zappos book, and
Ah,
she's like,
yes.
"Oh, this is it. We need to have a culture where people go above and beyond. Read this book and let's go make that culture happen." And I'm like, that isn't the way culture works. I mean,
No.
right? Like, you know, uh, you're you're reaching the part where that they talk about in the book, how much empowerment they gave agents and how much they can do things, but our management wasn't looking at all the other things they're doing, like you know I was fast I was over I just could not understand or believe that he talked about that after so many weeks of training, if they feel like they offer the agent, okay, if you don't think you're getting this, we will give you $2,000 to go find what you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So don't keep this job just because you need the money. You know, we want people that are buying into what we're doing,
They want to be
and
here.
yeah, and want to be here. And if not, we'd rather pay you to go find where you want to be, you know? And I'm sure my boss is like, what? We're going to pay somebody $2,000 to quit? What? Do you understand? This is it's
You're
not
not
about the money.
paying a salary for the rest of the year for someone who's going to bring the rest of the team down.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Uh,
I'm sorry, there's a monsoon happening and
oh,
it's
well,
scaring the kitty. I
oh,
don't know.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So I've kept you almost an hour, so we won't be going too much longer, but I do want to know, are there albums or songs that you routinely go to provide you comfort, to inspire you,
Oh
that are
man.
part of your lives?
Yes. And even this week, I've been listening to on repeat Dr. Dre's 2001 album, but the instrumentals.
Ah, okay.
He is masterful regarding a beat. There's never more than you need, but there's also nothing missing. And when you listen to the instrumentals, all those subtleties come through, and I just think it's remarkable. So like that's something I could listen to forever. I know it's scary outside and loud. Um, let's see I mean, I could probably listen to one of the dogs involved. Let's see other albums that are like a part of me. God, that's so hard. I'm such a nerd for music. I can't be
Okay.
asked that question. Like, I mean, yeah, no, there's just because there's been periods in my life where I've just like listened to an album on repeat and like now it's in my head.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I love the band HIM because I'm like this hopeless romantic. I love System of a Down and what they did with the weird Hollywood thing in the late early 2000s. I'm a nerd for Eminem. Huge Eminem fan, but also Necro, who's again one of these underground
Yeah.
types that you've probably never heard of. But man, there's just and then again, listing some bands earlier. I like Destruction. They're basically like the German Slayer.
Hmm.
Been around about as long, and they're just these gnarly like speed thrash metal guys. I mean, Warhead, local boys, Warhead.
Yeah.
Their album Age of Tomorrow is a perfect thrash metal album that was released in 2006, and it sounds like it came out in the 80s. Even like looking at the packaging of the CD, or like this was
Hmm.
printed in the 80s, and they just nailed it. I could talk about music all day.
Yeah.
I could
I
talk about
love it.
music all day.
No, this is awesome. I appreciate it. All right. Any final thoughts before I get to the Mary question?
Let's see, any final thoughts? I guess just thank you for this opportunity. Like I said, Jesse, most of the podcasts are real businessy and kind of getting into the weeds. This has been cool to just kind of hang out, chill, and again, get to know each other
Yeah.
because we all have different tastes, and it's been really cool to see the commonality. So, all right, the Mary question, though, I am prepared for this one. I'm ready
Very
for it.
nice. All right. So
Yeah.
if you are one of Paul's clients or a fan of his newsletters, and I'm going to let him promote it in a minute, how to get more information. But I end every episode with the Mary question. Jay Armstrong, who is a retired honors English teacher, back when he was teaching, he would take 2 days and he would break apart Bruce Springsteen's song Thunder Road. He would treat it as a poem. He would look at the lyrics, he would talk about the themes, he would discuss it with his class, and at the end of the 2 days, he asked the question, does Mary get in the car? So
Yeah.
Paul, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car?
No, not at all.
All right.
Because he is being just as cavalier as the man that he is eschewing. And he's just trying to get her in the car. And if Mary sees that this is, he's just this other guy, he just happens to have a guitar, but other than that, he's the same other guy. No, I think Mary is a lot smarter than that. I think he played himself with that song.
Okay, I love it. I like that answer. All right, Paul, if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
So I'm all over LinkedIn. You can find me, Paul, Sokol. You can also go to paulsokol.me, get on my email list. It's a very old looking landing page intentionally because it's only really good hardcore kind of stuff. And I send it out very infrequently when I discover something that's actually good. And then if you are Facebook, if you are Facebook, yeah, if you're Facebook, you can find us at facebook.com/bpronow, or you can find me at Under the Hair, and that's my public figure for Facebook. So a lot of stuff going on. Reach out if you thought I was cool. And if you didn't think I was cool, definitely reach out and tell me why you think I'm a tool. That's always fun too. I'm
That
always
is
open to all conversations.
absolutely. Paul, I think you're cool. I think this has been
Thank
a
you.
great conversation. I have loved getting to know you. And yes, we will have to do this again. So I don't know, Bruce is touring in 2023, so you might have to go check him out.
I
And then,
might, if he's
and then
coming around Phoenix, if you
yeah,
ever come around here, let me know. We'll go
yeah,
do something.
yeah. And then we'll, I'll have you back on and you can share your feelings. But
Yeah,
for
I'd
now,
be down.
listeners, go talk to your family doctor, find out if you should be vaccinated, if boosted, and let's all be kind to each other because that's what we need to do to get through this.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon.
Welcome.
Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.
And we're out. Good job, sir. That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. And now I'm gonna go listen to Element 80 and
Okay.
and see how I feel, because I guess new metal. Let's see what they're about.
All right. Sounds great.
Yeah, they apparently made it onto a Need for Speed video game soundtrack, so it can't
Okay.
be that bad.
Yeah. That Ryan Carroll is the drummer, and he's my nephew.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I see it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be great. All right. Let me know what you think.